Joining the program now is Tom Bell, who is a law professor at Chapman University Fowler School of Law out in Orange, California. He's written a new book, Intellectual Privilege, Copyright, Common Law, and the Common Good. Tom, welcome to the Peter Schiff Show.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for coming on. So, how far have we strayed? In the framers of the Constitution, they provided for a system of copyrights and patents to protect inventors and creators of intellectual property and things like that. But what is it like today with modern intellectual property law, and how different are things today than they were, a couple hundred years ago?
It has changed a lot. For example, the founders who wrote the first Copyright Act in 1790, it's 1 year after they ratified the Constitution, provided for a maximum copyright term of just 28 years, and now it can last up to 120 years.
So longer than the lifetime of the typical human being.
Yes. It could be life of the author plus 70 years now, or for works for hire up to 120 years. And the Act itself has gotten, it's not the only indicator, but the Act itself has gotten huge. The original Act in 1790 had just a little over 1,000 words. Now it's well over 70,000 words. That's just a word count. The remedies have gotten much more draconian as well. Now you can go to jail. You can suffer statutory damages of $150,000 per infringed work. The founders provided for 50 cents a page.
Yeah, although there's been a little bit of inflation, but still, the numbers don't jive.
I checked that out, Peter. Actually, the inflation, I ran the numbers. That comes to about $6. 50 cents in about 1800 is about $6 today. So you can't excuse it all.
Prices are. I don't know. Prices are up a lot more than 12 times since 1800. But even if you double it again, you're still talking about a relatively small fine in comparison to what we got today. Your legal bills. It's not just a fine. If you get involved in some kind of a copyright or lawsuit, your legal bills are going to be a lot more than the fines used to be.
That's absolutely true. Attorneys are not cheap. And now you almost always have to involve an attorney because copyright has gotten so complicated. It's kind of like the tax code that it's very difficult to figure out most of the time whether or not you're infringing, whether or not you have a fair use defense. The founders, infringement for them was making a copy. It was very simple. They didn't have any derivative works rights. They didn't have any rights for public display or public performance. Basically, they targeted the stuff today we would call piracy. That's all the founders cared about. So if you wanted to do a derivative work, say a translation or a musical version of a book, that's perfectly fine for them. That wasn't infringement.
So to them, you had to make an identical copy. You had to basically transcribe something word for word. But if you wanted to base something on somebody else's work, if somebody wrote a book and you wanted to use the characters, for example, but you wanted to make a short story out of it, or you wanted to just do a play based on a novel somebody wrote, you didn't have to buy the rights from it. You could just do it, is what you're telling me.
Yes. There wasn't much. That wasn't tested much because there weren't these huge entertainment markets like we have now. But basically, the founders had a lean, mean, clean Copyright Act. They only cared about maps, books, and charts as well. They just cared about getting their country up and running. They weren't interested in all these frivolities. They didn't care about protecting music or sculpture or paintings. None of that stuff was covered in their act. That's another way it's changed. And well, I so admire the way the founders did it. I've released my book under the 1790 Copyright Act.
Well, did you violate any more recent copyright laws in the process?
I don't think so. I did write the book. I have a copyright in the book. It's just the way that the Mercatus Center and I have released intellectual privilege. Basically, it said to the world, first of all, the copyright will expire after a maximum of 28 years, and then it's, anybody can do anything with it. And furthermore, if you want to create a musical out of my book, have at it, because I'm not claiming that right.
All right, so if I want to make a movie based on your book, I could just go ahead and do it. I don't have to cut you in. But the question is, just because it's changed, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean, automatically that we've changed for the worse. I mean, it's possible it's a change for the better. So, I mean, do you think, society is better off, and individuals are better off with the greater degree to which work is protected today, or the way we had it, back then, when you didn't have all these kinds of protections, where if a movie studio could just find a book like what's the woman that wrote Harry Potter? Those were popular books, but what really made her rich, I guess, were the movies. But what if the production company could just say, hey, those Harry Potter books are selling really well, let's go make some Harry Potter movies, and didn't cut her in. What do you think is the better system? Better for free markets, better for innovation and prosperity?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. It's the question we should ask. And there's a few things to say about that. One is, first of all, nobody really knows. And I think that's important to keep in mind. I mean, you want to hear an expert say, I got it all dialed in, and that's what most people would tell you. I'll be frank about it. People talk about copyright policy like they have numbers, like they can turn these dials and figure out exactly where the right balance is. They talk about copyright being a delicate balance of public and private interests. And I think that's BS, because we don't have the numbers. Nobody knows for certain. Lawmakers just can't calculate things that finely. And even if they could, Peter, they wouldn't care because of the public choice pressures, the lobbies that push copyright. And that's the second thing to observe, is that we can't be certain if it's optimal, but we have reason to believe that copyright, because of lobbying pressure, has been pushed too far towards restricting the freedom of speech of everybody who wants to use copyrighted works. And we see that in so many ways. Copyright has only grown in terms of its scope, the powers of the remedies, the term, the things covered. It just gets bigger and bigger. Now, you could argue every time lawmakers have bumped up copyright powers, they've improved things, but I'm a little skeptical. And the third thing is, we have horror stories.
Yeah, I would guess, like in my example, and it's J.K. Rowling who wrote all the Harry Potter books. My guess is that, she would have written those books whether or not, she was able to claim exclusivity to, all media. I mean, she would have written all those books even if anybody would have been free to make a Harry Potter movie. So I don't think that she would have not written them. So the books would still be here. And the movies would have still been made, and the movie companies wouldn't have to pay the royalty. And, of course, there might be even more Harry Potter movies because anybody could produce one. You wouldn't have to have the permission of the writer. You wouldn't have to own the exclusive. So there might be, several companies shooting various different Harry Potter movies, right? There could be a half a dozen different Harry Potter movies made by different companies. There could be Harry Potter plays. Somebody can come up with Harry Potter lunchboxes or Harry Potter bed sheets. They wouldn't have, anybody could do anything. And I'm sure all of that would still have benefited J.R. Rowling because it would have made her books that much more popular if she wrote another one.
I think that's very plausible, very plausible.
So it's hard to say that none of this stuff would happen. But the thing is, if somebody creates a character, and should they have the right to that character in anything? If I come up with a name and I create a character, do I own that character in all of its facets? That if you want to make a movie using my character, then you got to pay me. If you want to write a song about you got anything commercial involving a character that I created. If you want to use that character, then you got to pay me because I own it. That's the idea. So is that respecting more private property, or is it restricting my right to write a song or produce a movie about whoever I want?
Well, I'd say a couple things. One is copyright law today does protect characters, but you describe it as private property, and I don't think we should describe copyright as private property. I'm a big fan of property rights, intangibles, things like cars, computers, farms, houses. And people call copyright a form of property, and I don't think that's accurate. I think it's misleading. I prefer to call it a privilege. It's a government-granted privilege, like a taxi medallion. You know, that doesn't mean it's bad, but it does mean we shouldn't give it all the respect that we accord things that really qualify as property rights. So, yes, characters get copyright protection, but I wouldn't call it property. I'd say it's a privilege that the law gives to certain authors, and I think we can be skeptical that it should go that far, but it does today.
Yeah, and I see the point would be, look, if there's a piece of property, actual property, like a car, I mean, if it's my car, if somebody takes my car, then I can't use my car anymore. I mean, I no longer have access to my property because you've stolen it. But if I create a character, I have access to my character, whether or not you decide to incorporate that character into a work that you're doing. I mean, it doesn't diminish my ability one bit if somebody copies my character and also uses it, because I haven't lost the use of it myself.
Yes, that's correct. Economists call that non-rivalrous in consumption, and that's why copyright is very different from the kind of stuff that really qualifies as property. If you have an apple and I eat it, the apple's gone, but we all get, more good stuff from copying your song. It doesn't take away your song, absolutely.
One thing I definitely would have to agree, that all the money that we spend, or let's say waste, in litigation on copyright and patent lawsuits, all the lengths to which companies go to protect their intellectual property, and all the resources devoted to enforcing these intellectual property laws, all that, how much is that costing us? I mean, so clearly, if we didn't have so much protection, we wouldn't have to be spending all this money enforcing it and protecting it. And clearly, that's just deadweight loss to the economy. The only question is, does all that money that we spend net benefit us because of the ability of the creators of their work to enjoy a greater profit from their work than would otherwise be the case if there was more free and fair use available, which is what I want to come back to and talk about after the break, is the idea of free and fair use. I mean, when can you use otherwise copyright material? In fact, I want to give you an example, because I recently just put up a YouTube video and I had it taken down because somebody filed a copyright claim against me, and so my video was taken down. So we'll talk about that after this break.
But you didn't know how. 9 out of 10 historians agree. If Thomas Jefferson and Thomas Paine were alive today, both would be Shift Radio Premium members.
Somewhere up there, Thomas Jefferson is looking down with great pride.
Shift Radio continues right now.
We are talking with law professor Tom Bell, whose new book, Intellectual Privilege, Copyright, Common Law, and the Common Good. Tom, one of the arguments that is always made in support of the copyright and patent laws that we have is that we need it to encourage innovation so that people will come up with new ideas and new things because they want to know that they're protected, and their time and their effort and their investment, they'll have a chance to reap the reward. But, then you look at an industry like the fashion industry, which is, certainly one of the most innovative industries, and that every year there's new designs coming out, new collections, things are always changing. Yet nothing is patented, or, the labels. You have a logo, yeah, you can have a copyright on that or something, but you come out with a new dress and anybody can knock it off. They can make the exact same dress with the exact same color, the exact same pattern, the exact same cut, virtually identical to yours, and it's totally legal. Yet that doesn't stop all the innovation. It happens anyway.
You're right, Peter. Wow, you really know your stuff, and it's not just fashion. I mean, jokes, recipes, automobile designs, perfumes, and, of course, fashion. The list goes on of these industries where effectively there's nothing like copyright or patent, and there's no shortage of innovation. Now, you gave the best reason for copyrights, and that is to encourage innovation, to encourage people to sit down and write the great American novel or create great new songs. And, it's the best reason. But we have to wonder, we should be a little skeptical how necessary it is at all, given there's so much innovation in these other industries where there's no protection. And then, even if we think, there's something special about books or music, we got to wonder, do we have too much protection? Because every time you go too far with copyright, you're basically making us all a little bit poorer. So if there's too much copyright, then basically we're worse off.
There are plenty of people that are millionaires and billionaires in the fashion industry, and they survive. They get paid for their work. I mean, yes, they do try to keep their new collection secret, and they make a big deal of when they open it up, on a runway in Paris, and they know how long they have before people can start taking photographs and knocking it off and making it cheap in China. But you know what? By the time they start knocking that off, they got a brand new thing that they're doing. And, there are people that want to have the newest design right away. They don't want to wait for the knockoffs to come a year later. But yeah, I mean, it's you do have evidence where we don't need it. And of course, what would happen if we did have all these copyright rules in the fashion industry? Would it make it better? I'd have a hard time arguing that it would. I mean, to me, I probably would make it less innovative. It would probably run up the cost of clothing if that were the case. But let me ask you about my own. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Peter, there's people in D.C. right now lobbying to create protections for fashion design. So maybe we'll have a chance to find out.
But let me ask you just about my own example. So I put up this YouTube video a few weeks ago, and within 3 days, it had almost 100,000 views, and it was really starting to, catch hold. And it was a 5-minute video, and a little under 4 minutes of the 5-minute, I took from another guy's video who had a 4-hour video. And what this guy did is he filmed the college debate, and the entire debate he filmed, and it was 4 hours long. And so I basically was disgusted by the debate. I thought it was a mockery of a debate. And so I basically made a video in which I juxtaposed an interview that the winning debaters did on Fox News with scenes from the actual debate, because I wanted people to see what actually happened in the debate. So I just took, not quite 4 minutes of footage, not in a row, but little pieces from that 4-hour video, and put it in, and spliced it in with a minute of Fox footage. And I made a 5-minute video to say, hey, take a look at what's going on with college debate. And I put a link to this guy's video, and I said, if you want to see the whole video in its entirety, here's a link. So meanwhile, I got the guy about 15,000 views on his video, which is more videos. He didn't have any other videos that had more than 3,000 views. So I was getting him more views than he was getting before. But because I used a few minutes of the footage he took, he filed a copyright, and my video got taken down.
It sounds like he didn't maybe like your commentary. Was that really the problem?
Well, I didn't have any my only commentary was I thought the debate was a joke. And it really was. It basically featured two teams speaking so fast that you couldn't even understand what they were saying, and every other word out of their mouth was the N-word. And it was just one team was just rapping. And they basically plagiarized. The guy was basically singing a rap song that another artist had written. So he was basically plagiarizing what he was saying anyway. And the other team would just, and this and that and that. Nothing had anything to do with the topic. So I just wanted to show what was going on. This guy didn't know. This guy took a video of somebody else's debate. He didn't have to think up anything. He just filmed it and put it on his YouTube channel.
Yeah. Well, I think that goes to show how copyright can restrict freedom of expression. I mean, you were making an important point in the public forums about the way debate is operated these days, and the guy used copyright to shut you down. I guess maybe you don't know his motives, but I suspect he didn't like your message. People, I don't think, courts don't give enough credit to the idea that copyright restricts freedom of speech. It really does. It tells people, if you're engaged in anything close to unoriginal expression, and it sounds like your expression was actually pretty creative because you put stuff together, but anything close to unoriginal expression, somebody can walk in with a copyright and basically make you pull it down. And, that's kind of upsetting if you read the plain language of the First Amendment. I'll give you another example, Peter. MLK.
We don't have time. Tom, we don't
okay.
have time for another example because we have under 30 seconds left before the hard break. But, hey, look, I appreciate you're coming on the show. It's a very interesting topic, and I'm not sure exactly where I fall on it because there's a lot of food for thought. There's a lot of good points to be made on both sides. But I'm sure that we have gone too far with respect to intellectual property. But where the right place is, it's hard to say. But I think your book's probably a good read. Again, it's Intellectual Privilege, Copyright, Common Law, and the Common Good by Tom Bell. Hour 2 of the Peter Schiff Show is coming right up. We'll be right back.
Your dancing feet, yeah.